Can you just give us a brief description of your story? Got into the subject.
Yeah, yes.
Sorry to ask you again.
No, that's all right. Yeah. Plus, let me read it. I got into this phenomenon, or really interested in it, in at the early 1970s, when my wife and I purchased a holiday chalet in the town of Derelict, which is about 30 miles south of Alicante. Anyway, eventually we went down there, and I drove down there with my wife and my daughter Liz and her then boyfriend. And we got there, and so on and so forth. It had been a very hot day and a long drive. So whilst Liz was in one room, my wife in another, we shared a small room. A friend and I upstairs, downstairs, all day. Anyway, I couldn't sleep, so about 1:45, I got up and had a drink of lemonade in the fridge. It was so hot and stuffy in the little chalet. I put on a dressing gown and went outside. Torrevieja lies on the Costa Blanca, the white coast of Spain, on the sea. It was a glorious night. There were myriads of stars there, but no moon. So anyway, I walked along there, enjoying the cool of the night. It must have been about 1:45 in the morning. And I wandered along, and suddenly something flickered in my right eye. And I looked up, and there I saw a huge ball. At first, that was my original impression. I was quite fascinated. It was a sort of hazy golden yellow colour, with, of course, what we now know is a typical UFO shape, you see. That is, there was the little ellipsoid thing on top. And it was so low, I could see the windows on the outer rim. Now, I had no knowledge and no interest in this phenomenon. And my immediate reaction was that I was seeing a man-made satellite. You know, one of these things which zoom up and do whatever satellites do. Mm. So I strolled along until I'd come to the toilet block. And this thing was coming very, very slowly, and it was quite low. Anything actually between 500 and 1,000 feet. So low I could make out clearly, quite clearly, the various windows and so on, you see. So I walked along, and it was coming quite slow, no noise whatsoever. I was quite entranced with it, really. Then it got right overhead, and all of a sudden, Matthew, I have never been so scared in all my life. Now, this is irrational. Why should what, in my opinion, was a man-made satellite going overhead suddenly cause me to become so terribly frightened? It doesn't gel. It's illogical. Certainly isn't scientific. Anyway, I dived into the toilet block. Very, very frightened. Anyway, I looked out and the thing had gone. So I dashed back, not in a straight line. I was zigzagging my rugby playing days. Got back into the thing, into the chalet. Didn't sleep much that night, I must confess. Told my wife about it, and she had a good laugh, which is fair enough. And that was that. We went back, we got back home. And I didn't dwell on the thing, but I hadn't forgotten it, you see. Anyway, I was in a local bookshop one day, and I came across a book, Van Daniken's Chariot of the Gods, and I bought it. And that, of course, stimulated my interest then, you see, which meant, of course, that I kept on buying ufological books ad infinitum, ad nauseum, whatever. But my real interest occurred in 1974. A farmer living Sleafordshire, I think, or something like that. Anyway, there are two boys. The farmer's son was 17 and his cousin was 16. The boss told them to go and look at some cattle in a nearby field. So the boys took the tractor, went to the field, opened the gate, drove in, couldn't find the cattle. Now the field is on a slight rise. They went round, they found the cattle all herded together in an obviously frightened state. And the boys counted them, they were all there, but in a very, very nervous state, you see. So they took the tractor, went up the hill, and as they started to go down the other side, into another field, separated by a hedge. Now this was in March, which meant that the trees were leafless, you see. And this was, I should think, late-ish evening. Anyway, the boy claimed they saw light on the other side of the hedge. And he described it as yellowish and so on and so forth. Then they told me how they saw what they called a rugby ball, about the size of a rugby ball, going up and down, making no noise whatsoever. Other than perhaps, I think, if I remember rightly, a slight whirring noise, but that's what it. Anyway, it slowly drifted up and came into their side of the field. Of course, they're very frightened. Now, one of the questions I asked these boys was the fact that when this thing came down into their side of the field, and they were relatively near to it, did their tractor engine stop? And it didn't. Now, which meant, of course, that had that been a petrol engine with its mechanics and so on, the electrical circuit and so on, it would have, but this was a diesel, which meant that there was no electrical circuitry on it. Anyway, to cut a long story short, this thing was doing the same thing, and it slowly went up and departed off like that, you see. Of course, the boys are very, very frightened. So that was the start of the what we then call the Double Enigma, the name of our book. And that was 1976, 77. And we were getting, the phone didn't stop. Why people phoned me up, I don't know, but a report had gone into a local paper about the fact that I had investigated this prior thing. Well, anyway, it's come out in the Double Enigma with so many people, so many frightened people. Honest, down-to-earth people who had no desire to delve into the occult and no knowledge of the occult, let alone anything else, who became very frightened. And it is in this context that I try to approach this subject as objectively as I possibly could. I mean, it's a phenomenon which has as many arms as an octopus. You solve, at least you think you solve one problem, and you immediately create another one. And then, of course, with the history of the UFO phenomenon of 1976, 77 in temperature, has been detailed in our book, The Double Enigma.
Right. Would you like to sort of tell me what your feelings were on the subject back then? Because I understand they've changed now, but back then,
initially,
what
yes,
you concluded then?
Yes. Well, initially, as I've said, Matthew, I had no real interest in the subject. I knew of it, but I certainly had no interest. But then, having read Van Daniken's book, The Chart of the Gods, that acted as a precursor or whatever. And I got interested in the subject. Then when this phenomenon occurred, of course, people were aware that I was an expert, so they that's by the way. But a friend of mine, sadly he's now dead, he had worked with the Western, I can't think of his name now. Oh, Ted Holiday. a very, very good reporter.
Right.
He had worked with the Western Mail, I think, in Cardiff. He's authored 3 or 4 books. Anyway, Ted and I, Ted was incapacitated. He had a heart problem. And we got together and folded up this thing. Well, you haven't read the book, have you? Well, this focal thing, but attention was the farm
On the coast. Near Stackrocks.
Near Stockrock. That's right. What's the name of the farm again? Ripperson.
Ripperson farm.
Ripperson.
I've been there.
That's right. I've got the book there.
Right.
And that was the focal point. Now here you have a couple, an ordinary farming couple, young couple, very pleasant people, no interest whatsoever in the subject.
You remember their names?
Yeah, I've got.
Okay, yeah, fine.
It's on there.
Okay.
Take them all over with you then, Matthew, and you can whatever when you want to.
Right. You know.
There we
know
are.
where it is.
That's right. Yes. Zindy.
Oh, it doesn't matter. It's not important. It was just
Billy Coombs. Billy Coombs.
the Coombs family.
Coombs family.
Once you say it, I mean,
That's right.
back
It
to
comes.
it then.
It
Yeah,
comes,
yeah.
And his wife.
Mm.
Well, how that couple, and the children for that matter, how they remain sane, I simply do not know. Because these things which went on, it was a focal point. There was obviously an almost atavistic focal point in that area, on that particular farm, which drew these things, whatever they are. And Billy kept in touch with me, would phone me, and Holiday and I went out to see them and so on and so forth, you say, many a time. But one occasion, we'd been out there, Holiday and I. It was in August, and Billy had had quite enough of the whole situation, and his family and his wife. We were coming back. It was a lovely evening, and Ted said to me, we'd passed through a little haven, and at the top of the hill there was the Haven Fort Hotel. Now this is one of our odd experiences. So, oh come on, he said, let's go and have a drink. So I drove in, parked down. It was a glorious evening. We got out, and the hotel overlooks the haven itself, you see.
Yes.
About 9 o'clock in the evening, and the kids were enjoying themselves, and so on, so forth. So Ted and I went in, and there were 3 young couples, obviously holiday makers, boys and girls, you know, at the bar, all enjoying themselves, laughing and talking. Anyway, Ted and I got our modest drinks. We moved over to another table, discussing the day's events at Ripperson Farm. We were talking away, and then a middle-aged lady came over, and she apologized profusely for disturbing us, but she said, I couldn't help overhearing your conversation. She said, are you talking about UFOs? I said, yes. Why? She said, will you come over, meet my husband, and hear what we've got to say? Now, this is totally unsolicited method. So over we went, sat down. Now, one of the things we learned quickly in this show, you've got to have some idea, or try to acquire some idea, of the personality of the person you're talking to. Now, there are some people who are so very, very dogmatic, mostly scientists. They have got to have literal proof of everything. And conversely, you have the other type of character who seizes onto everything, is so utterly gullible that he will swallow everything you say. Right. So Ted was most critical of the ensuing conversation, and I must confess I too was. But no, they were self-assured. They were intelligent people. And her story was this. Now, I'm only reiterating her story. I won't give you her name. Let's call her Mrs. Jones. That's not her real name. They came from the Rhondda Valley. They were down on holiday. And Mrs. Jones was saying that they'd just finished, Saturday, they'd finished a late show on the television. A person had gone upstairs and she was just filling out the coffee cups when she noticed a very bright light about 5 miles away on what was called the Holy Mountain.
Right.
Now, this is a colloquialism for, it was only a sort of slight rise, but all of a sudden there was an explosion of light. So we let the lady go on, having assured ourselves that she wasn't romancing or there were no mental aberrations or anything like that, you see. Well, according to Mrs. Jones, the whole area was bathed in light. She called her husband down, and they concluded it was a heath fire. Anyway, as they watched it, this light came nearer and nearer and nearer. Now, by this time, they were hiding behind the curtains in their lounge, both getting rather frightened, you see. Now, outside their home was in a little, excuse me, a little kind of cul-de-sac. There were street lamps outside, and these lamps went off automatically at 1 o'clock in the morning. Well, this light flooded the whole area, and suddenly the street lights went out, leaving only this natural light, you see. And then that suddenly went out, replaced by a green beam of light, straight down. It took some swallowing, but I'm merely reiterating what this lady and her husband told us. So, fair enough, that was that. So in the morning, they got up at 6 o'clock, went outside, and there were a number of trees. Oh dear, I forget the name of the trees now. They went outside, and the tops of these trees, the leaves are all singed, indicating heat, you see, or some form or whatever. That was that. Then, weeks later, then, Mrs. What wasn't it? Was, let me see. That's right, yes. We met a lady a long time, 2 years ago, when she was having another holiday. She said she was, because of these events, 2 or 3 weeks after, she said, I was on the edge of a nervous breakdown. I couldn't sleep. I was having the most appalling nightmares, terrible dreams. She said, I really was on the edge of a nervous breakdown. Now, this is this lady's testimony. She said it was a Saturday afternoon. Her husband had gone out to do some shopping. She was washing up the remains of the lunch in her kitchen, and she said, suddenly I heard a voice. Now, again here, Matthew, you have to be, as I say, careful of all sorts of things. Any form of mental disorder, mental aberrations, or schizophrenia, whatever. But we had a short
imagination, perhaps.
Well, precisely.
Yeah.
You see, you have to rule these things out before you can accept anything which is even acceptable. But we had assured ourselves that they were an honest, down-to-earth, decent couple.
Yes.
Not given to exaggeration or whatever. And she said, I suddenly heard a voice. Now, I jumped in there and I said, now, Mrs. Jones, was it male or female? Oh, I don't know, she said. But she said it was very, very powerful. So Ted said, well, what did it say? Well, she said, in my state, my confused state, she said, I can't really remember. But I do recall one thing. I said, what's that? She said, before Oh, she said, I remember the words atomic war and before it gets out of hand, Christ will return. Now, those were the lady's words. Atomic war, not hydrogen bombs, but atomic war. Before it gets out of hand, Christ will return. So that was all really we could get out of it, you see. And that was that. Now, the odd thing, Matthew, it must have been about 2 years later, after interviewing this couple, I was leaving Haverfordwest. Again, I think it was it was a school holidays, which meant probably the middle of August, something like that.
Right.
It was about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It was a lovely day, and there were people walking down, doing this, going down to St. David's and so on and so forth, traffic and so on. So I had a largish car at that time. I was going along, and as I was leaving the town, passed a young fellow doing this. So I stopped the car, he got in, and I said, "Where are you going, son?" He said, "St. David's." Oh, I said, "Well, I'll take you halfway." Fine. Now, Matthew, I want to emphasize this point. This young fellow, he must have been about 25. He had a grey sports jacket, grey flannel trousers, and he had a hold-all, which a denim blue hole, which is about almost oval in shape. Now here is a fellow, complete stranger to me. I give him a lift halfway to St. David's, and he settled down the seat. And the first thing he said to me was, he said, "Do you know anybody who has seen a UFO?" Now just think, put yourself in that situation. That's not the sort of statement you make to a total stranger who's giving you a lift. Do you know anybody who has seen a UFO? Now, it was an appalling thing. I said, "Yes, of course, I know one myself." My mind went blank. Literally was taken over, of course, you see. Out of the corner of my left eye, you remember Mrs. Jones's words, atomic war. Now, here's that fella here. I said, a huge bubble with the words atomic war in it, out of the corner of my eye. And I had told him this story, including the words, before it gets out of hand, Christ will return. And I can see him now. He was looking, straight ahead. And when I used those particular words, when Christ, before it gets out of hand, Christ will return. His jaw fell like that. He didn't speak to me for quite a few seconds. And he didn't turn, he says, "Surely you don't believe that. Surely you don't believe all that." I got very angry. I said, "Believe it." He said, "Of course I believe it." I said, "Christ will return one day, and then will come the judgment." Stop like that. Well, I tell you, honestly, I was glad to get him off. Dropped him at the corner here, off the main road. And you have to recognize that there are certain, what shall we say, spiritual characteristics, if you like. He got out, thanked me, and so on. And then telepathically, the words came, I was to bless him. I was to bless him. It was such a strong, I knew very well, by that time I got used to the, or more or less, to the mechanisms of spirituality, or whatever you like to call it. I was to bless him. And no way. I said, "There you are, son, have a nice day." That was it. So what did I pick up, Matthew? That's my question. What on earth did I give a lift of?
I'm a bit confused though. You said down by the side of you had a ball.
Yes.
The words. What was that?
Now that was to differentiate the essential part of Mrs. Jones's statement.
Right.
She said, "I can remember atomic war," right?
Yes.
"And before it gets out of hand, Christ will return."
Right.
Now, the focal point and the emphatic point of that is not the fact it was atomic war. Before it gets out of hand, Christ will return.
Right.
That was the important part.
Right.
That there was to be a return, you see.
Yeah. So what was this thing then? What?
It was just a bubble, and the words atomic war in it.
It just appeared there.
It disappeared.
It appeared out of.
It came out floating as a bubble would, and then it just
lower half of the car.
Yeah, yes, lower half the car, you see.
Right.
Just like, and it just floated past. But I was more concerned watching this guy. Surely, he said, "You don't believe all that." And my God, Henry, do you believe it? So I've always believed it, and I always shall believe it. One day Christ will return, and then will come the judgment. And he shut up like that.
Yes.
And I've asked myself, what on earth did I get? I mean, you don't get into a car driven by a complete stranger, and the first thing you say to him, "Do you know anybody who's seen a UFO?" Oh, no way.
So some people term those sort of things as like synchronicities, things that shouldn't happen but do. Too much left to chance, but strange things. I mean, I know somebody in America who he believes his whole life has been guided down a particular path, and the stories he has to tell are absolutely fascinating. But he said he was working on the Atlas missile project, and he was actually there on top of a missile, just putting the screws in or something, and he just had this amazing sensation that he was doing wrong. He shouldn't be involved in that sort of thing,
That's right.
missiles and whatnot. And so he got out and just left the job. That was it. Walked away from it. And his road of discovery then was to go and visit places that he had an urge to go and visit. And he met people that it appeared he was meant to meet. And they told him things that he thought he needed to know. And nothing happened by chance. He would pick up strangers on the side of the road, and the first thing they would say to him was, "Do you know anything about UFOs?" And it's not just one occasion, it was many occasions. And they would ask him, and he would say, "Well, yes." But he knew in his head that he was brought there to tell that person something. And when he went to somewhere, somebody would get something from him and he would get something from them. Connections were made, synchronicities, and I think it happens to a lot of people.
It happens, yes. Now, what puzzles me is, Matthew, I've had, as everybody else has had, periods in one's life where doubts arise and so on and so forth. But more and more, there are two things which I have concluded in this phenomenon. One is synchronicity,
Yes.
the time essence. And secondly, I have gone from the nuts and bolts theory. In other words, they're utilizing a source of power, a source of energy, totally unknown to us, coming from distant stars and so on and so forth. Now, of course, that's having really delved into it, and having had the most unpleasant period when I was actually researching the phenomenon in respect of the Riverson Farm thing. I thought it was terrible dreams, nightmares. Oh, good gracious me. They're quite frightening. There's a spirituality about it, you see. No doubt about it. And I think going from, as I say, from the nuts and bolts theory, that there are visitations from other planets, that's a whole lot of baloney. It's the I suppose it's the universal concept of the continuing battle between good and evil, because these things are essentially evil. There is no doubt in my mind whatsoever. Their whole intent is to befuddle and befog the mind of mankind, to take his attention away from the crucial point of the cross, and to, in fact, literally, it's satanic. Absolutely satanic. In that point. You don't mind if I show you a few books?
No, certainly. you want me to get them for you?
Yes, rather than
Yeah, because your legs a bit.
it takes a lot.
Yeah.
Okay.
Did you always have like a religious belief? Have you always been maybe a churchgoer? And
Well, as a boy, now my late father was a schoolmaster.
right.
My maternal grandfather was a Baptist minister. So in effect, there is a genetical, what shall I say, background to the whole concept of what one's, what shall I say, outlook on life is going to be, you see.
Right.
Because life is all a matter of genes. And yes, as a boy, well, in fact, I was made to go to church. I was a choir boy. My father was the headmaster in the little school in Osmaston. And he was a sergeant of the church and so. So in effect, my maternal grandfather, as I say, was a Baptist minister. And I'm going back to the last part of the last century, early part of this century. And you could say that there was a background of a Christian upbringing, you see.
Yes.
In other words, the seed was sown.
Yes.
And then, of course, we grow up and maybe we become a bit disillusioned about this, that, and the other. And we tend to drift apart. We cease going to church and so on and so forth. Not necessarily living a bad life, but sins of omission rather than anything else, you see. And then, of course, as you get older, the urge is then you start getting back into the routine again. Yes, I would imagine that from the point of view of the need to live a so-called Christian life, yes, I think the seeds were sown as a child.
Was there one particular thing which brought you to sort of believe in this sort of?
Yes.
Was there a sort of an experience or an awakening? There's one particular.
Well, I remember as a child.
Yes.
My maternal grandfather, he was a great man, Reverend John Samuel Jones. He preached in the Baptist chapel in Hill Park in Haverfordwest. Now that was the days when the old Welsh Bible, they preached hellfire and everything else, you see. But J.S. Jones, in fact, there were three brothers. They were known from Pembrokeshire right up to Cardiff. There's John Samuel Jones, who preached in Hill Park in Haverfordwest. There was William Samuel Jones, who preached in Bridgend, and there was David Samuel Jones, who preached in Cardiff. And they had the old Welsh Hwyl. They were men, they were respected, they were loved. But their testimony was, right, mate, you go on the wrong side of the track and you're heading in the wrong direction. And of course they laid down the law, that from the point of view of the pulpit, you see. They were revered, they were respected, and they were loved. But again, that's going back many, many years. But the one point which you asked me, what sort of initiated me or whatever, I was only a child here, really. I should think about 5. My parents, for a brief while, lived with my grandfather, my maternal grandfather, in Haverfordwest, Lower Cambrian Place. Now, my grandfather had the gift of healing. Many a time, people would come to a house, and he had they call it the laying on of hands. And he did, he healed people. So strong was his faith, you see. But I remember, I must have been about 4, I think. I remember I had a most painful earache. And it was a Saturday morning, lovely day. I was sitting on the front step, yelling my head off. The old man got a bit fed up with me, I should think. I'm going to be crying and so on. Anyway, he came out, and he sat on the step, and I stood between his legs. He put his hands on my head, and he prayed, you see. Like that. I could see himself running back to my mother. My earache's gone, my earache's gone. Now this is the feature, this is the, what shall I say, the essential ingredient behind all this nonsense, all this phenomenon. It is the continuing battle for the soul of mankind. The battle of good against the battle of evil. We are living, Matthew, in the end time. I think you can see some of those books there, you've seen. There's a friend of mine, Reverend Paul Inglesby. Paul and I, he's written a number of books. The end time is this, that you can see the state of the world today. It is slowly deteriorating. Old standards have gone, new standards have arisen, which are totally unrealistic in every respect. And more and more and more, the world, and this country with it, is sliding down a path into spiritual oblivion. It is the end time. In effect, what is happening is the fact that slowly but surely the protection of the Holy Spirit is being taken away. Now, we have to accept this, otherwise it's no use going from A to B and saying, all right, this, that, and the other. You've got to start with, as I did with the experience of whatever, and then you go back to the Bible and say, there it is. There will be signs and wonders in the heavens above and on the earth below. Men quaking with fear or whatever and so on. This is what it's all about. This is the end time, I think. It can come any moment, but chapters on the doctrine of the eternal states, eternity, judgments and rewards, and so on and so forth. This, in effect, there's a crescendo coming along. Now there are wars all over the place. Religion has gone down and fallen. Church doors are being closed, and people no longer believe. Belief has gone by. Do your own thing, as the things do. And this is what this phenomenon is all about. It's to say that they come from, well, you've seen them, you've seen one yourself. Now, the only thing is, which a question which does puzzle me, there is no doubt that these things are, in my mind, and in the mind of many, many other observers, intelligent people, that these things are trying to bedazzle the mind of man, to draw him away from the safety of the cross. And in other words, so befuddle him. You see, I mean, look at the amazing spectacles people have seen. And yet, the Bible records how was it Job was taken up into the Spirit, showing the whole of the world. And this is the same procedure which is happening. That the mind of man is being manipulated away from the church to the unseemly and the ungodly and everything else. Now that's only my opinion, but it's the opinion of many, many other people. Now this one here, and I'm very, very glad that somebody has at long last had the courage to. You met what's his name? Oh dear, he's the editor of the Flying Saucer Review. Gordon Crichton. Good, known Gordon for many years now. At long last, Gordon is a Buddhist.
I know, yes.
He is not a Christian. He is not a Buddhist. And whilst I accept very, very much from the point of view of his experiences, but here we have in Flying Saucer Review the very first indication. There have been suggestions and little pointers. That's the first real article on what it's all about. Because, you see, we can waffle around for hours. UFO in the church, UFOs, this is Paul Inglesby.
Right.
Now, this man has done tremendous work. He has seen the very real dangers behind this phenomenon. Here's Flying Saucer Hostile, Brad Steiger and Joan
White now.
White now, yes. People, now this one, the message given to me by extraterrestrials, that is dangerous. That is dangerous. It's by Paul Real or something.
Yes.
Here's a man who's been hoodwinked and whatever. No, there are people who have Barry H. down in the Bible and flying saucers.
Right.
These things. Anyway, now, for many years, I've been trying to get, along with other people, to get the government to at least assess whatever the existence of this something, not any great way as, but Nick Pope. It took him 3 years for him to. He's a minor official in this government, Tory government. We can all that minor, but in the 3 years, the government's finally conceded. Open skies, closed minds. There you are. There's the.
I know Nick. I've spoken with him.
Have you?
Lectured with him. Yes.
Have you really?
Yes.
Now, what sort of a chap is he?
He's a nice chap.
Yes.
I suppose, I don't want to say too much. I better turn this off.
They are formed. Every planet has the same basic ingredient. It would be carbon or whatever.
Yes.
In a state of flux or goodness knows what, or decay, whatever. But throughout the universe, shall we say, the same homogeneous plan is there. So the only differential is the fact whether it's an old planet or a young planet or a planet in the making, or a black hole or whatever. Our shall I say, modus operandi is the fact that we don't know enough. You see, when I talk about a state of spirituality, all of these things, however far science has gone in our own terrestrial world, it still doesn't know how to make a thing appear just like that and then disappear by putting off an electric light. No, there are certain aspects about this whole thing which make me feel that it's not so much a state of, how shall one put it, the ingredients of life as we know it, but it is a state of spirituality which harbors characteristics and capabilities we know little about. We simply cannot divine the difference between Homo sapien and whatever else exists out in space. So this is why I say we come back to the same question. These UFO things can do things mankind cannot do, and they do them. They have alienated against mankind the treatment of animals, in severing appendages, this, that, and the other. The reaction of animals to fairly close proximity. I've gone into this pretty thoroughly. Always one of great fright and desire to get away, you see. We can try and explain the phenomenon in terms of near scientific evaluations as best we can.
Yes.
But our knowledge is so pitiable in respect of what we can do and what they can do. So this is why I say that whatever they are, however we explain them, their conditioning is such that they're far superior to mankind in a state of physicality or whatever, or materiality. Brings us back to the age-old question. No, they're spiritual rather than physical.
Right.
You've heard of the Roswell case. Of course you've heard of it. So this question came up some time ago. Well, yes, if they're spiritual, why are they? Why do they appear in human form, their human form, and so on?
Yes.
And so on. Well, if you read your Bible, you see that the change from invisible spiritual form, Christ himself appeared to the men in the upper room. They were there, the disciples, and all of a sudden Christ. In other words, from the spiritual form, invisible, to the human form, visible, you see. So whatever it is, these potential beings, whatever they are, have that capability of becoming invisible, coming from the invisible state to the visible state, and remaining in the visible state. Which brings me back to the point that I think it's a spiritual mess up, really.
Do you think that as we've progressed, like in the last 100 years, to the level of technology we've got now, television, radio, satellite communications, space travel, and all those sorts of things, it's not going to be long before we may possess the technology to actually have maybe UFO craft and be able to do things like jump in and out of dimensions and appear, disappear? Do you think it's beyond the realms of possibility that man will ever be able to do that?
Man will be allowed to go so far and no further.
Right.
He will be allowed to, yes, he will be allowed to explore the heavens, this, that, and the other. The skies, rather.
Yes.
But he will not be allowed to do the things which these things can do. Oh yes, his technology, his scientific know-how and everything else will certainly reach a stage where he can land on the moon and do this, that, and the other, but is all within the spectrum of scientific knowledge and scientific know-how. The laws of science, as we know them, yes, but when you get into the realm of the psychotic or whatever, and where angels fear to tread sort of thing, no way.
But it would seem to me like because we don't know about it today doesn't mean we won't be able to do it tomorrow. And maybe there will be a little device you can wear on your wrist that if you press a button you'll disappear, and then you can press it again and you'll come back. I mean, is it absolutely impossible that one day we will be able to do these things and have craft which can levitate, you know, with no noise, no pollution, no fuel, perhaps using free energy or things like that? Do you hold to any of those theories?
What is the human body made of? What is everything made of? It's made up of atoms. Now, when I was a boy, a schoolboy, I was told there was nothing smaller than the molecule. Molecule could not be what's it now, because we know different. We got down to all sorts of things. No, I don't think we can. Man is essentially made up of whirling atoms, and as I say, all right, we've got down as far as quarks and goodness knows what. But the essential point of life as we know it is the fact that man has a human body, a physical body, with certain physical stresses, physical limitations, physical capabilities, as well as a spirituality. Now, it is the human body can die, but the spirit, the soul, no, the soul. I've heard a preacher talking about the immortal soul, man's immortal soul. Man's soul is not immortal, because the Bible says, the soul that sinneth, it shall die. So man's soul is not immortal. The soul that sinneth, it shall die. The spirit is immortal. And what we are fighting here is a spirituality of the opposite of, what are we here? You know, this the spirituality of the eternal states. I'll just read this to you, my friend. The scriptures teach that man is on probation during his time on earth. Those who respond to God's grace and obey him will be eternally rewarded in heaven, God's dwelling place. Those who willfully resist the grace of God, do their own will, and serve Satan, will be eternally punished in hell. Satan's dwelling place, eternal destinies are settled here in time. My destiny, your destiny, everything else. And this is what we have to accept, that the UFO is an emissary of the enemy. It's satanic in design, it's satanic in purpose, it's satanic in every conceivable way. And mankind now is beginning to see its potential, because the thing exists.
Oh, yes.
It cannot be man-made. It cannot be visitations from other worlds, life forms, whatever. They are spiritual, they are illusionary to an extent, and they're dreadfully dangerous.
Okay, right, wait. I'm very interested in this point because, I mean, I'm not saying I disbelieve, but I'm not sort of fully convinced myself yet. But would you say that if somebody has an encounter with a UFO and is not in any way frightened by it, not in any way frightened by the experience, meets the aliens, and the aliens impart them information very similar to that would be given in the Bible, in so much as there is going to be an end time, and that things are going to come to a close. But they tell people things that help them to enrich their lives, make them happier. But there doesn't appear to the person, and they're not able themselves to pick up on any negative aspect of what has happened. If there was nothing negative in an experience, or simply somebody standing in the street and seeing a UFO and being perplexed by it, does that mean that in some way the person has been drawn towards the negative because they have simply not dismissed it or called it satanic? Is there any danger to a person from just accepting a subject for what it is?
The world creation itself is based on two things, Matthew: cause and effect, action and reaction.
Yes.
Now those things constitute the whole of creation: cause and effect, action, reaction. No, you mean because a person may come across an incident or whatever,
yes,
and does not feel frightened, does not necessarily mean that a thing is potentially evil, because there's always that mixture of good and ill. Wherever ill is, evil is, good is at hand to counteract it, you say.
Yes.
Oh, no, I don't think that because there was no emotional reaction or anything in the form of fear, or, as in my case, it was downright fear. No, I've spoken to people who've seen these things, and in fact I've even been drawn towards them. There's that wonderful case of that clergyman in the South Sea Islands. He was a Roman Catholic missionary.
Right.
And with the children and the people in one of the Pacific Islands there. And they actually saw a UFO land, saw people on board, they took off, and the people on board actually waved to them. You see, so where you have the source of evil, there has to be a protective agency there as well, side by side or whatever. Oh no, because you weren't frightened or whatever, doesn't necessarily mean that you yourself were, what shall I say, in such a state. Oh, good gracious, no. Oh no, every living soul has a guardian angel. Every soul. In many cases, I presume that it must be in a state of despair, the way some people live their lives today, but oh, no way. No, in my own case, I can only say that, yes, I was indeed protected. This is what it's all about. There are guardian angels, especially for those who hold, I say, Christian views, but everyone, good or bad, has the right, almost, to expect deliverance from any potential source of danger or whatever, be it physical or spiritual.
Yes.
But so few people realize, I don't know whether you go to church or whatever.
Not really.
No. Well, the day will come, Matthew, when, and it's coming now, with all this nonsense going on in the air. This is the end time criteria. We are living here. These things are with us, and it has to have a purpose. There's always a purpose in life. And this purpose is to, these things will single out the sheep from the goats. This is what's happening.
But they've been for thousands of years.
Sorry?
These things have been here for thousands of years.
Of course they have. Ever since man has been on earth. Of course they have.
But you think it's culminating to a point?
Well, this is the end time.
Right.
When my grandfather, my Reverend John Samuel Jones, he preached the end time. Now, the end time can be 1,000 years or even longer. But slowly the end time incorporates the fact that the protective influence, heaven's protective influence, is slowly being taken away because Satan will be allowed to reign over the earth. Okay, for how many years? Oh, I forget now. A period of time whereby those who do not have the brand, what's it, the stamp, either on the forehead or on the hand, will not be able to work or buy food or anything else. This is one of the, it's a state of thraldom for Christian people, Christian nations. But it is coming slowly towards that way, you see. You look at the state of the world today. Murder, thievery, thuggery, you name it, we've got it. And churches are empty, attendances are falling, and this is it's the end time syndrome. So I try and tell people, for Pete's sake, you know, it's never too late, Matthew, but then it can never be too early. Now, you ask yourself, what's stopping me from going to church or going to chapel? Ask yourself that in bed. You're tossing and turning. Why don't I? Ask yourself that.
I can tell you a few reasons why, but I don't think you like them.
It doesn't matter. Go on, tell me them.
I think there's many religions in the world, and they pull in different directions. They're very different. And as you say, Gordon Craig believes in Buddhism. And there's Indian religions, there's Sikhs, there's all different gods and there's all different beliefs. We live in the West. The predominant religions are Catholicism and Christianity, and those different ways of looking at it. But basically, if I lived in a different part of the world, there would be a different belief system. So the confining restrictions of the way you must believe and the way you must put your faith in a particular strain of religion with these religions, I just don't accept that is the only possibility. I think there are more possibilities. I think there may be a guiding power, there may be something out there, but I don't think he's written it down in a book and he said, if you step outside those lines, mate, you're for it, you know, you're going down. I don't think he would be that cruel to sort of...
Now, I've heard this before.
Yeah.
I've heard this before.
Yeah.
Buddhism.
Right.
Now, Buddhism has many of the ingredients of Christianity.
Oh, they all...
Tolerance,
yes.
this, that, and the other.
Yes.
So many of them simulate Christianity, but Christ said, he, talking of Holy Communion, he who does not partake of my body nor drink of my blood shall in no way enter the kingdom of heaven.
Right.
Now, that is what he said. Now, whether the Buddhist doesn't do it, the, what's his name, Muhammad, who was buried in Medina, Mohammedans don't do it. That is the one and only thing that...
Can we trust what has been told to us in the Bible? I mean, it's been changed so many times over the years by people who wish to, you know, have power over people. You know,
well, the Bible hasn't changed. Mankind has changed. Yes, the Bible hasn't.
But the church has changed the Bible.
Well, the church has changed. That even in the church itself, there is disruption because of the forces of the enemy. You see, this is why Christ said, unless you become as a little child, ye shall in no wise. So we've got to come back to a simplistic point of view, which I was taught as a child, And we can't equivocate, Matthew. No way. There is no, oh yes, this, that, and the other. We cannot adulterate our Christian views with what the Buddhists may think, or the Mohammedan may think, or Confucius may say, or whatever. No way.
Right.
There is one single road, and few there be that find it. No, it's when you perhaps you get older, and you will find, in fact, funnily enough, a fellow came up to me some time ago, wrote to me, and I met him and so on. And he was an unbeliever, and he was tinkering somehow with joining a church or a chapel. So in fact I wrote to the minister of chapel where he lives, and so on. And he would write to me, and suddenly, I don't know, penny dropped. There was something a little bit suspect, and it came out in the end. He was a pagan.
Mm.
Well, I had a letter which was full of curses and goodness knows what, but he was a pagan, and he thought like a pagan, and he wrote like a pagan. You can go so far, do so much for people, but there is a limit to everything, you see. But there's one thing in life, Matthew, and you're a young man, so maybe you may not take it to heart. But there is a tide in the affairs of man which, taking out the flood, leads on to fortune. Depends what that fortune is. Well, it is wealth or good things of life or whatever. But there will come a time in your life, as it has come in everyone's life, when you will think, oh, now hold on a second, which road am I taking? Where am I going to end up?
Mm.
And that is the point. And I would try to tell young people, you never know quite when you say, come on, son, come on out, your time's up. This is what it's all about. Now, you ask yourself, what is stopping me from going to church and going to chapel? And I will tell you, it's the enemy. The enemy puts questions into your mind, this, that, and the other.
Mm.
As long as he can take the focus from that man, Christ, not God himself, Christ, because that is any repudiation of his forgiveness.
Mm.
I mean, even the most hideous of sinners, provides it's not against the Holy Ghost himself, can be forgiven. But that, you see, when you look at what, well, then I'll be here now, hold on a second. What constitutes the eternal states is time and eternity, dispensation of the Adamic covenant, the Noahic covenant, the Abrahamic covenant, and so on and so forth. Resurrection of the righteous, resurrection of the unrighteous. That is the second resurrection, the resurrection of the unjust, the resurrection of damnation, and the awakening of shame and everlasting contempt. There are people who are already damned. Eternity, judgments and rewards, and the eternal state, and so on and so forth. Because there comes a time in the face of man. Make your mind up time. And that's hell, the dwelling place of the unredeemed. Sheol, the Hebrew, the Greek, Tartarus, the abyss, and so on and so forth. Gehenna. No, it's a question of trying to tell people, why don't I go to church? And they can't give me an answer. They mumble something, but they can't give me a logical answer. It's what they call taking out spiritual insurance, I think. Mm. And I try and spread, for Pete's sake, mankind will be judged by sins of omission as well as the actuality of other things, sins of omission. Why didn't I do it? Why didn't I give that guy a helping hand? Or why didn't I go to do this and that and the other?
Yes.
And this is a terrible point. But, take it from me, Matthew, the whole of this phenomenon is wrapped up within the battle for the soul of mankind. That is the whole answer to it.
I wonder as well, I mean, it's like, if one is good, if one doesn't aim to harm others,
No.
But why would one need to actually spend their time and their effort worshipping in a church which serves only perhaps to sort of connect yourself with the Spirit than God and the cross, when one can do better with their time to help others and be good by not going to church and doing something?
You cannot. You cannot. You see, you can serve God and you can serve Mammon. The Bible says, words without deeds, or faith without deeds is useless. In other words, I can have all the faith, but if I don't do something with that faith, if I don't help the guy next door or whatever, it's useless. So you've got to combine. You've got to combine the service of accepting the eternal grace of God or whatever. There is a creator, there's a creation, there's a creator. And we've got to accept that mankind has to differentiate between that which is, what shall I say, in a state of perpetuity, and that which will ultimately disappear. The soul can die, the spirit is eternal. The whole thing of life is this: where is the spirit going to spend eternity? It's either one of two places, you know where they are. This is the point: the soul that's in it shall die, the spirit lives on, either in hell or in heaven. And so many people look at you, and that's it. Well, it's make your mind of time, you see. And I would seriously suggest to you, and I'm not criticizing you in any way at all, because there are so many unfathomable, and as you say, why this, why that? Why can't I do good in this life, as one should, without going to church? You've got to do both. He who does not drink of my blood, not eat of my body, nor drink of my... In other words, he who does not partake of Holy Communion, because there is nowhere where that cannot happen, in this country or anywhere else. It's a question of what I call taking a spiritual insurance.
Races have been damned from the start, then, haven't they? I mean, it's like, you know,
well, the Jews are still suffering, you see, for what they did.
Yeah.
Jewish nation, they crucified Christ, they're still suffering. Even the Jewish nation will ultimately be forgiven. Yes, if you ask me what's going to happen to Mohammedans or all the other religions, they will ultimately we'll all see the what shall I say, the saving grace, and but those who perpetually sin, who kick Christ out of the door, they've had it, right? They've had it. And as I say, the description of the nether regions is most unpleasant.
Yeah.
But there we are. But I don't want to bore you in any way at all. But I know you asked me my opinion.
We might be getting a little bit off the point, but I mean, it's interesting stuff. The only thing what I would say is that, I mean, what we need really is proof. I mean, you yourself said earlier on is we need proof because it's scientific. You need to prove it. It needs to exist. You need to be able to test it. And so much of this subject cannot be proven, cannot be tested.
Well, that, as you see, you call astral proof. Yeah. Well, this is where faith comes in.
Faith is something which a lot of people cannot get to grips with.
Well, that is because believing what we cannot see.
Yes. Yeah.
This is what constitutes faith.
It might be classed in some ways as schizophrenia, but
no. The Bible constitutes the Word of God.
Yes.
And the history of the believing what we cannot see and accepting what we cannot know. In other words, unless you become as a little child, In other words, let's cut out all the various divisions and diversions and everything else, and take it for granted, because what I am today, what you are today, ultimately is going to decide where our ultimate residence is going to be. We can't equivocate, Matthew. We're either that away or that away. We're either on the right with the sheep or on the left with the goats. And it's as simple as that.
I think, sort of, if you want to be absolutely sort of straight about it, I mean, it is whether you're a good person or a bad person. But I mean, I'm sitting here looking at you. You seem real to me. I hope I seem real to you, you know, and what we experience makes up our life. If a UFO lands outside now and a being gets out and he seems like quite a nice person, what is there for me to say that he is a nasty alien, you know, son of Satan? If I talk to him and if I deal with him, and if he tells me something which seems perfectly reasonable, and you know, then he flies off again, why am I being such a nasty sort of person for, you know, dealing with that? There's nothing to me that really says in the Bible that that situation is bad. And I can understand what you say about possibly not having a faith in God, but what I experience in my life and what I do and what makes up my life, I've had no sort of inkling towards there being a set God path, you know, and the Bible doesn't explain it to me.
Well, the Bible says this: judge not that ye be not judged, condemn not that ye be not condemned. In other words, I have no right whatsoever to say that any person that I can judge and say, oh, he's this, that, and the other. No way. Otherwise, I am judged. I try and take people as I find them. I've met some very, very nice people. I have met people, when you meet them, complete strangers, and there is, what shall I say, an outflow of, you want to embrace them. And other people I have found, I've been in one case there, oh my gosh, emanated evil. Absolutely. No, we have to get back to the fact that mankind is a mixture of both good and evil since the days of Adam and Eve. Yes, he's got that spirituality within him, and it is this to which this phenomenon is not so much appealing as trying to make its presence felt. It is evil. It is evil. There are certain, of course, what evil is.
But one has to find that out for themselves.
You've got to find out for them. Now, how are you going to find that out?
Well, if it doesn't present itself to you, then you wouldn't think it was.
Oh, no, but evil disguises itself. Oh, no way. You look at Lourdes.
But how can you tell the truth then?
No, this is the point.
There is no road to the truth, because everything could be a lie. Every single thing.
This is what Scripture is all about.
Excuse me for saying blasphemous, but I mean, even the Bible could be wrong.
The Bible says, test the spirits.
Yes.
Test the spirits. Now, with Lord.
But how could you do it?
Quite simply.
Right.
If something appeared before you,
right,
this and I would hope I would have the courage to say, whatever. Do you come in the name of Christ?
But what if he did? What if
he can't? He can't.
But what if he doesn't come in the name of Christ? But he's not Satan and he's not evil. What if he is just an alien that happens to live in the same universe?
Well, an alien has to. No, there's no such thing as a negativeness.
Right.
No way.
Right.
There has to be. It's like there's no grey area between the good and the bad. There's a sharp line of demarcation.
Right.
And the alien, he may claim to be this, that, and the other, but I mean, even the devil himself can cloak himself as an angel of light. The Bible says that.
Yes.
This is up to humanity itself to find its way.
Yeah.
And as the good book says, few there be that, talking about the road to heaven is steep and hard, and few there be that find it.
Yes.
Well, I don't know, the Bible mentioned 144,000. That's not going to be a lot.
No.
So I don't think, in effect, they were talking to that extent. No, it's
That's the Jehovah's idea, isn't it? The sort of limits to how many can get in, but it does seem a bit strange.
Yes, we have to accept that the many millions of people will ultimately shed the mortal coil and be accepted. But the picture of heaven and hell is rather well done. I forget Bookison. It's like an hourglass. Instead of having only two, it's got three. Then the thin stem, then that, and then that again. Heaven, paradise, hell. Because every soul which dies goes immediately to paradise, you see. Paradise in itself can have degrees of, shall I say, of reassurance or peace or whatever. The better at the top, but as you go down, you're getting near to the nether regions.
Right.
But that's the Judgment Day issue, you see.
Well, a lot of that has supposedly been taken up from the pagan beliefs, isn't it? That when one passes over, one passes to a dimension then, where one is with others then, who have passed over. And depending on your actions in life, whether you were a good person or you were a bad person, or whether you're a negative or a positive person, depends on whether or not you're at the bottom of the ladder or whether you're near the top.
Well, that's right. That's right. Yeah.
So there is an element of, if you have aligned yourself in a good manner, doesn't necessarily mean you have to believe in a God, but you're a good person.
No. Right. Now, come on, Matthew. No way. Now, come on. Now, you're being deviated.
Possibly.
This is precisely. You're being deviated. This is what old Nick says himself. Oh, don't believe that. You'll live a good life. You see, the whole essence of the afterlife is a belief in Christ. He is the focal point.
He's never shown himself to me. I've never seen him. I've never experienced it. He's never even talked in my ear. He's never shown me anything. I've seen things which are around, which tell me that the universe is very big, and there's a possibility of much life and much sort of knowledge out there. But I've never, ever made a connection with
Well, then you haven't made...
asked.
Yes,
I said, please show me, give me a sign. I would like to see. But he never has. So how am I to believe when I can't see? I'm supposed to have faith without knowledge.
No, wait a minute. You're asking too much, Matthew. You're asking too much.
I know.
First of all, you see, it's all very well. I've said that myself.
Yes.
You know, give me a sign, whatever. No way. Faith takes a long time to build up. And you can only do that, Matthew, with a thorough knowledge of the Bible. Unless and until you read the good book, one cannot get out of the world. Because, quite frankly, the influences within the human psyche are such that there is a continual battle. I mean, with some people, they go through life and never does a thought ever percolate through their minds as to what they'll be doing. They may be taken away the next day. But they don't never penetrates that one day they won't be here. And that's it. I always remember the story about the bloke who died. He lived a so-so life, hadn't time for church, or hadn't lived a bad life. A life of, what shall I say, an indifferent life sort of thing. You see, not wholly bad. Certainly not wholly good either. Nevertheless, he died, and he was interviewed by the Lord. And every thought, every word, every deed, ultimately will have to come out. We'll all have to do this. And at the end, he was told, Christ told him, son, he said, when you were alive on earth, you didn't want me. Now that you are dead, you can't have me. Depart from me, I do not know you. And that is what is going to happen to millions and millions and millions of people. It's not an easy thing, Matthew, to breathe and to eat and to enjoy our creature comforts. These are a physical thing, but there has to be an opposite thing. Because the world of creation is made of opposites.
Yeah.
A physicality and a spirituality.
Yeah.
And so on and so forth. And we have to differentiate between that which is right and proper. You see, you cannot go through life without having the, what shall I say, the safety of a faith behind you, the Christian faith. And I know I'm preaching this, that, and the other, but I'm concerned for the welfare of people. You cannot go through life. We can do that, we can conform, we can say this, that, we can say this with our lips, and this, that, and the other. But it's got to go far, far deeper than that. The Bible uses the word love a lot. And this is what it's all about. It's an intrinsic feeling for the other guy. Some people have it, a lot of people don't. That you're here, I'm here. We're here, sharing a world we know very little about. But it's a very, very abstruse subject, and there's a continual battle going on inside all of us. But we've got to fight it, Matthew. I would like to think that eventually you will maybe have a word with your vicar or whatever. But unless, have you been confirmed?
You mean baptized?
Baptized, yes. Yes. But unless you start taking that, and I take it on a regular basis, sets me up for the week, every Sunday sets me up for the week. But again, there we are. We're getting back to the phenomenon. All this weird things in the sky, with all their attributes, and this, that, and the other. And it's the biggest confidence trick under the sun.
Well, what do you think the governments know about it then?
The governments know a lot about it. The Americans know a lot about it.
So
the British, the French.
Yeah.
They are, and quite frankly, I can see their point of view. They are afraid to let the populace know, people of the world know what it's all about.
Well, obviously, then they must be wishing evil on people because if they know the truth.
They know the truth.
Then they're setting people up to become slaves. You know?
Of course they are. Precisely.
So
what's his name? His book, oh dear, I've forgotten now. I wish I knew. Never mind.
I can believe in that conspiracy theory because we do see the way the world is crumbling and nobody in government is interested in helping. They only compound. They don't help. I don't think governments are there to help these days. I think governments are there to destroy.
They are there to look after themselves.
Yeah.
Quite right. No, it's going to become a highly personalised issue one day, Matthew. You know, we can talk and everything, but we've got to put our words into practice. And many people, in fact, the Bible talks about people running hither and thither, crying out, Lord, Lord, and so on and so forth. And that's precisely what's going to happen. You can't live the life of a Riley and the life of Christ on the same thing. It's very, very hard to emulate. We can at least try. But I would strongly advise you now, for your own sake, what's the nearest chapel to you, or in your town?
I don't even know. I mean, I feel around, but
you see, you are being hindered by, you're being stopped quite in your tracks unless you go there. You see, you're being kept in a sort of world of oblivion. We can be as nice as we like, we can be as neighbourly as we like, we can be as Christian as we like. But if we do not do those things which we've been told to do, and you know,
it's so me to do.
It's all a bluff, Matthew. It's all a bluff.
Well, we're going to reach a bit of an impasse, I can see, on this one. But I mean, I respect your views, and I'm very glad that you've got such a strong faith. I hope one day I have it as well.
Well, I hope you do for your own sake.
I really do hope it, because there's nothing more that I would like as a confirmation for me. But it has got to be from...
It's got to be from the heart.
Yes.
But you won't do that until and unless you go to the altar, you kneel down.
I've done it. I've been to church. But do I feel it?
Now, listen.
Is it just an act?
No.
Is it an act of devotion, or is it feeling in the heart? Yes.
It's a thing of the heart, and suddenly some people, it hits them like that. Other people, it might take years and years and years to build up. But it's got to come. And it won't come unless we as people make the effort to come to do it, you see.
Well, there we are. I mean, I don't think we'll have to spend too much time on this now.
No, Well, let's get back to
yeah.
what you want to
Okay.
do. Sorry.
All right then. I mean, we'll chat at the end. If we're going to use the tape, I think we'd better use it for UFO stuff.
Yeah, oh, yes. Are we still on?
Yeah,
Yes.
still on.
Okay.
But okay, Ripperston Farm. Then I wrote a note about Ripperston Farm. What exactly happened there then, and in which way would you say that was connected with evil? How did the people experience things? How did you experience things there? What was seen?
Well, I think you should read The Dove and Enigma.
Right.
Have you got it?
I wouldn't like to just take it straight out of there, though. I mean,
Well, yes, there were several incidences. The Stack Rocks affair, you see.
yes, lights going into the rocks.
That's right.
Yes.
And, of course, the kettle.
Right.
5 times Billy... what's his name again?
Billy Coombs.
Coombs.
Yes.
They were in a pen. Pen was bolted. And yet 5 times Billy had to get the tractor out. The cattle had been found half a mile away in a neighbour's field. Neighbour phoned up, an irate farmer, you see. And one thing Billy told me, he said they were always lying down, very, very thirsty, and tired, exhausted. That happened 5 times on one Sunday. There's a Stack Rocks affair.
5 times in the one day.
Sorry?
That happened 5 times in the one
On
day.
one Sunday. You see, these things happen.
Nobody could have moved the animals that quickly without being seen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They had to pass the farm.
Yeah.
Then, of course, Billy's house. There was a rose tree on that side of the door, and there was a rose tree further up. On that, we were down there with Ted and I, and we saw them. Beautiful white roses. And Billy was watching television. He happened to look and what's her name? I forget his wife's name now. The face of the window, the figure at the window. Do you remember that? No.
I remember something about it.
You must read the Dove and Enigma.
I think some of these things are paralleled in the Welsh Triangle, aren't they? That book as well.
It could well have.
I've got a copy of this in the house, but I've never got around to reading it. I'm certainly going to read it afterwards.
You'll get round to it.
Yes.
Now, Billy's language can be pretty strong at times. They saw this figure there, and whatever. The next morning, Billy went out. He and his wife went out.
What did you describe the figure as before we go too far? Yes.
I forget what it was now.
Was it an alien or was it just a
It's, as I said,
silhouette? Right. Okay.
Read it. It was 30 years ago.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
But the roses on the left-hand side of the door,
Right.
which might be significant,
Yes.
they were all burnt and singed and dehydrated and so on. So it's most odd. But the more we delve into it, the more we realise that what we're dealing with is, yes, young Stephen Taylor. You remember that case? Stephen lives Broady Way.
Right.
And he was courting a girl who lived about a mile and a half from where he actually lived. He was going home one night, saw his girlfriend home, took her home. It was midnight. It was a nice night, dry. Billy was walking along home. Came to a place where no one he would see. Houses and lights and so on. About midnight. And he suddenly realised, looking at a field, a gateway, he couldn't see them. So he got closer. And at the back he saw the shape of the UFO. And as he stood by the gate, a silvery figure suddenly stood right in front of him. He was so frightened he lashed out at it and ran. And just prior to that, as he was walking along, a black dog rushed past him. Because black dogs are whatever. He took as a dog, so on. But young Stephen, it's far adequately described. But always
We got plenty of time.
We've got plenty of time. Oh, gracious me, no doubt, yeah.
Right. Okay. You said that when you burnt your books, you had a. I've heard about this a few times, but I don't know whether you put it in print. But basically,
oh yes, yes.
You burned your books and something happened.
Well,
that to me would be more evidence than maybe some of the things that, you know. No offense, I've heard already, but.
Paul Inglesby, who was a friend of mine. UFO in the church.
Yes.
UFOs in the church. Now, Paul and I correspond occasionally and so on.
Right.
Now, he was a Church of England vicar. Because he got so disillusioned with the Church of England, he joined the Greek Orthodox Church.
Right.
And he has researched this as much as I have. But actually his knowledge is far greater than mine.
Yes.
But you mentioned burning books. Now, both Paul had the same thing. He burnt his books on the subject. And he came back to, he realized that the implications involved in it, you see.
Right.
I did the same thing. I must have burned £500 worth of books or whatever.
Mm.
And a friend of mine had some spare land, so we got, well, there were hundreds of books, there really were. Quite valuable ones too. I poured petrol over them. And let me think now, which book was it? He went up with a woof, you see?
Yes.
And, oh gosh, which one was it? One book went, it was burning right up in the air. Down it came. Wish I could think of it. I forget now, but it was so appropriate in respect of what, as I say, Inglesby did the same thing. But another chap, it was Christian, he did the same. He burnt all his books, rather like the people of Ephesus with their
I thought you saw some sort of spirit or something.
sorcerers, that's right.
What exactly did you see? Can you describe it?
Well, anyway, this chap was,
sorry.
I'm trying to think, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
He, it was bonfire night, that's right. And instead of making a bonfire, he burnt all his books on the occult, the word I was trying to think of.
Mm.
The occultic books and so on and so forth, you see.
Right.
And again, doused and so on. And up it went, and smoke rose up in the form of a figure. The women scream, kids ran back, and it rose up in the form of a human form.
Right, but this didn't happen to you.
Not to me, no, but other than this particular book, and I forget the title of it.
Right.
It jumped up in the air. Obviously, it was meant something or other in respect of whatever.
Mm.
But this desire to burn books on ufology, it's occultic, no doubt about it, it's occultic. And it's unhealthy, really, Matthew. As I say, there are people like myself, like yourself for that matter, who have to perhaps bring it to light, show it up for what it is. Because there are thousands of gullible people who read these books. It's become almost a cult with them, you know.
Mm.
It really has. A dangerous one at that. Anyway, go on, you were.
Right, okay, well, you mentioned about the... you were part of Bufora, weren't you?
Sorry?
You were part of Bufora.
I was, yes.
Yes, yeah, no,
For the Broadhaven sighting.
yes, you were involved with that.
They definitely saw something there, no doubt about it.
Right.
Young Taylor, David Taylor, and I, and Ted was 11, Ted Holiday. They saw this capsule effect, and some of the, one or two of them actually saw a figure there, you see. We went to the site, it had been raining, whatever, and whatever, if anything had been left there, it was quite impossible for any human agency to have taken a machine or anything like that down. It was quite physically impossible.
Yes.
So those kids saw something, no doubt about it.
Are any of those, did you keep records? Obviously, you doubt it because of what you said, you're burning stuff, but I mean, did you keep any notes and things of that time? What I was interested to do is to see what these people, because there were children involved, weren't there, who saw this thing, whether any of those had grown up now and really wanted to talk about some of their experiences back there, what they remember of it, if they remember anything at all. But obviously some of those are around, you wouldn't know any of those, or have they?
Well, their addresses are in the Dove and Enigma.
They're in there, are they?
They're in there.
Right, okay.
You have got the book.
I've got the book, yes, I haven't read it though. No.
Well, you read it.
Yes, read that.
Yes, they've, funny enough, this thought has crossed my mind, and I'd like to, there's one case in Milford, now whether he's alive or not, I don't know. He was a bus driver. Well, he's probably retired, maybe still alive, I don't know. He was scheduled to take a coach to London, a day's outing.
Right.
Leave it at 5 o'clock in the morning. Again, it's in there. Anyway, he set the alarm clock, but he woke before 5. There was a glow, a yellowish glow in his room. It was all lit up. So he looked at the clock, too early to get up. Then he went to the window, and he saw oh, that's right, a skyman, as he called it, silvery suited, hanging in the air. I wonder if I spell that book, I might be able to find it for you. Kill. Now, what was his name? It's so long ago that I'd... No, this young tailor, you see, that's one experience.
Yes. Is that a real photo, or is it just an interpretation?
Oh, this is a mock makeup,
yes.
But this is how he described it, you see.
Right, yes.
Wait a minute. Agnostic behaviorism. David Allen, no. Can't even think of the guy's name. David Davis, Phil Davis, Warren Davis. Figure floating in the air.
Yes.
20 minutes. And then it slowly floated away. But yeah, the clicking dolls, you heard that one? That was quite came by quite accidentally, interviewing a family, and a young girl there, she was about 12, 14.
Yes.
She was alone, asleep in her bed in her room, woke up, and again this light was there. Went to the window, and there was a doll-like thing perched on the outer window, on the window ledge.
How did she describe the doll?
Flicking dolls.
Right.
And the thing was, she wasn't frightened a bit.
Right.
No, doesn't it? You must read the book, and it'll all sort of fit into place. You see.
Yeah, I'll reference back to the book when I need to embellish upon it then.
That's right. Well, of course, you can quote from that. You see.
Right, yes.
So,
So would you say then? I mean, I'll take it down another avenue. I'll just throw up in the air then various things, and you can tell me your opinion on them. What would be your opinion on the fact that the government are interacting with aliens? Do you think they've got recovered craft and alien stuff?
well, if you're thinking of the what's the American one?
Roswell?
The
Roswell?
yes,
Yes.
yes. I think they have either 3 or 4 crash UFOs then with the bodies of aliens,
Right.
and
Do you think there's ever been any crashes in this country of a similar time?
well, that squadron leader we saw one up in, was it Northumberland or Yorkshire, in that forest or wood.
Right.
So many years
You mean Colonel Holt over in East Anglia, Bentwaters, and they saw it above and they were tape recording it, and they saw the thing moving through the forest and it landed and people approached it and
Well,
looked
that's
at
the
it.
one. That's the one.
That's right.
That's the one. I don't know. There are so many new cases coming along, but the pace is hotting up now. You see,
Right.
and
What do you think the governments would have done with any of these craft then, if there was something that had been recovered?
well, if they recovered it, you can bet your life that the general public wouldn't be allowed to see them.
Right.
No, governments are afraid. They're scared stiff. In fact, who is it makes the? Is it? That author Timothy Good. Have you met him?
Yes. Well, I've spoken to him.
Should you know?
Yeah. I just didn't want to. I didn't want to sort of like slag him off.
Well, exactly. Yeah.
Because
But
yes.
it does typify the sort of person who has knowledge of a sort, limited, of course,
Yeah.
but nevertheless sufficiently, shall we say, accurate to be able to realize that such knowledge, if it became public, would cause a panic. This is what the American government and British government are all afraid of. If they knew the truth behind this, there would be panic, worldwide panic. So, in effect, you can see their point of view as well as, mind you, I think if people were more open about it, there would be far less speculation and everything else. But I don't know. Certainly I forget which book it is now, but according to this author, individuals, let's call them that, in human form have been implanted in the American government and the Russian, literally have taken over. That's right. So it's all very speculative and all very argumentative and.
Okay then, if you believe that a lot of this stuff is satanic and demons and stuff, do you believe that satanic groups and occult groups are directly responsible in some ways for appearances of UFOs, and they can cause these things to be manifested, and they can indeed, make people believe they've been abducted? Or
You mean groups here on?
yes, occult groups who are trying to use black magic and powers.
Well, it's quite possible. There's what's that church in California?
I don't know. Church of Satan or something.
Church of Satan.
Well, they have to be really, isn't it?
Well, it's a Church of Satan.
Yeah.
I forget its name now. It's quite possible because these things are drawn by whatever motivation or by whatever influences.
Right.
They seem to be drawn to certain parts of the globe, represent Farm, for example.
So was there a negative energy at represent Farm was in the ground then?
Now this is the point. A negative energy, I can't quite place that, but there is an energizing agent of some sort.
Right.
Even stones and Stonehenge apparently had some sort of thing. No, it's so terribly intricate and everything else. You know, as I say, we find, well, I think we found an answer to one particular aspect of it, and it only raises more questions with another issue.
Would you say that people like the Freemasons have been involved in the cover-up or something like that? Are you involved? You're not a Freemason, eh?
Well, if you want a truthful answer,
yes,
I would say A, I deplore Freemasonry.
Good.
And secondly, I do not know whether they have become involved in any satanic brotherhood.
Yes.
But I wouldn't be surprised if they were.
I'm fully convinced. You know, I'm not a great believer in the powers and good and evil, but if they exist, I tell you, the Freemasons are on the bad side of it. I don't think they're a positive organisation.
No,
I think it's a subtle occultism.
There's something unnice about the whole system.
Yes.
Yeah, they claim to do a lot of good, this, that, and the other, but there's an insidious strategy of. Oh, I don't like the idea.
Yes, I find it rather repellent, and it's a bit of brainwashing involved as well.
Oh, absolutely. Taking the oath and this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
You see,
getting people to do things that aren't possibly against their nature as part of initiation rites, and
that's right.
You know, and you're really taking part in rituals.
Yeah.
Whether or not it has any power, I don't know, but people don't know what they're getting involved in when they're doing these things.
Well, the higher up you get, I think the deeper occultic it becomes, quite frankly.
Yes. Yes. But was there any evidence of any sort of military cover-up in the West Wales area over this? Because Brawley was involved, wasn't it? Brawley got sightings happening on the base.
Yes, yes. You know, these things show interest in many things, of course, especially in relation to weapons of war and that sort of thing. No, I cannot say that I've got any knowledge of any undue interest in whatever, in Brawley or anything else.
Nobody ever came forward to talk to you?
No. There were sightings along that area, but not to the extent that they had any military implications. At least I wouldn't have thought so anyway.
Right. Okay. And with the stack rocks thing, I mean, there was an implication was made that there was some sort of like submarine facility.
That's right.
Going out there.
I heard.
Sorry. Yes.
Yeah, I heard that.
Yes.
Whether in fact, it was queried whether it had been a submarine base.
Yes.
But oddly enough, some divers from the Bristol area, I think, they come down here, still do as far as I know.
Yes.
They stay in Asgard, around there.
Right.
And they dive around the stack rocks, and they found some sort of wall effect there around the base. Years ago, in fact, I called there 2 occasions, trying to find them. But these people.
Do you know any names of that?
Honestly, I don't know.
Yeah.
You'll find a reference in the book.
Right, it's in the end as well. Okay.
But they found some sort of man-made whatever query put on the base of the stack rocks.
All right.
But I couldn't make head or tail of it.
Right. I'm just trying to think now. Would you say then that, I mean, we chatted about this on the phone, that people who are religious would be more of an attraction to the UFOs than people who would say maybe atheists or non-religious? Do you think the UFOs will flock to those types of people to try and draw them away? Or do you think everyone gets tempted regardless of their persuasion and strength and faith?
Well, if you bring a psychic denominator into it now, I've had mixed feelings about this. For a while, I very definitely had what I can only describe them as psychic experiences.
Yes.
And I found them, well, unsettling to say the least. I think actually you hit the nail on the head, because those people with propensities for a religious background, let's put it that way, seem to be, tact is the right word, but yes, on a number of occasions I've had unpleasant experiences.
Have they described in the book?
No. Literally, the mind is taking over. And I remember one case. A lady, a contemporary of mine as a child, she was in the Taskers Grammar School. I was in the grammar school, in the boys' grammar school. And she'd been dead many years then. But a few days after she died, no, she died on the Wednesday, and I didn't know. The lady had a habit of, when she was crossing the road, she would look very quickly that way, and dart across the road. It was a characteristic of her, you see. I was going along Bridge Street, and I hadn't heard of her death then. And mine just moved. Into another, quite frankly, another realm. There was the street with the shops and so on. And there was no, it's crazy, absolutely crazy. This woman, who was a very intelligent person, almost like a penguin shape, very deep set black, very, very dense white, walking along. It's daft, it really is. I didn't know she died, and yet I knew somehow that there was some implication with this person.
The figure you were seeing, yeah.
It was a figure, it was a dancer just like a penguin, black and then white. And it was only lasted for seconds, but then, of course, I learned soon after she died, you see. No, these...
you just telepathically knew that it was to do with her.
Sorry?
You just telepathically knew that it was to do with her.
Well, it wasn't very telepathic, as literally the mind was taken away. I've had telepathy with that character I told you in the car.
In the car.
Well, you know, that was sheer telepathy. No, this was a distortion of the mind. And most unpleasant thing too. But
when else have you had experiences like that?
Sorry?
When else have you had experiences like that?
Well, it's going back many, many years. Can't think of anything right now.
Would you term them as almost being like possessions?
Being like
possessions? Would you term?
Yes.
them
Oh
like that?
well. Yes. It's a question that you see, those people who consider themselves to be Christians are being attacked now, spiritually attacked, and I think more and more people are becoming aware of this factor. I find it difficult to visualize a situation where the evil part of the human psyche can become so prominent as to bring up visions of all sorts of things. That certainly was. But I don't know. It's an unpleasant characteristic, and Where the psychic component comes in, it's hard to say. I thought that, you see, the Scots people, the Celts, for some reason, have a spirituality which is called the second sight. You've heard of the second sight. You know it?
No.
Well, the Celts, the Scots, the Welsh, the Irish, the Norwegians, the oh dear, that part of Spain, which is, oh dear, what do they call themselves? They want to become separate. Basques.
Right.
They seem to be part of a homogeneous part of a race or a group of people who, for some reason, are part of the peculiar people, as the Bible talks about. It's peculiar people. Whether it's a genetical thing or a spiritual thing, I don't know. But certainly there are people who have what is called, especially the Scots for some reason, Scots call it the second sight.
Right.
That is, outside the normality. They see things which are invisible to other people, in other words.
Right.
And I began to wonder whether it was a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know. Well, certainly it's been well documented. But my own feeling was that I asked for it to be taken away, and thank goodness it has been, more or less. I didn't like it at all.
Yes. Oh, good. Well, I'm glad that happened. But how do you go along with these stories of hordes of aliens living here on Earth, say in underground bases and things, underground caverns and things like that? And people have sometimes stumbled across them. Have you ever heard any stories like that?
That was Hitler's idea. Did you know he was going to send, just prior to the outbreak of war,
Right.
Hitler was going to send an expedition to the South Pole,
Right.
to see what was under.
Right.
Yes, I think, funnily enough, let me see. Have you got Ingleby's
Yes.
books?
Yes.
Where did I see this? Additionally, experienced researchers have come to recognize the religious dimension involved in the awareness of victims. So important is this factor in UFO encounters, but I myself have long believed that government circles worldwide have concluded that it's precisely this religious angle which makes the problem so difficult to handle.
I know this angle is an angle they probably won't like.
They won't. That I can assure you.
None of them like dealing with the religious angle, but for that reason,
Well, you've got to get it out.
Is why I would like to,
Well,
because otherwise it's depression.
This has been my experience down the years.
So
That, you know, if you're going to... Now, I've got a scientific qualification as a vet. In other words, I've got to look at a patient. I've got to evaluate, at least assess the symptoms, what they are. Then I've got to evaluate cause and effect, because you can get symptoms simulating two different origins, or more than one different origin, you see. So in effect, what you have to do, you've got to sort of mentally dissect the whole issue to pinpoint a particular cause. And this is what you have to do here. But with this phenomenon, of course, it's so unrealistic that we're only going, as I say, we're only going on what we have seen and what we are learning still. But I maintain it's a terribly dangerous thing. I was sitting here one day, no kidding, I've got this. It was a summer evening, 2 or 3 years ago. Curtains were drawn, and I saw, using a child's riding helmet, of course you have. I saw going along there floating in the air. And I stood up, and there was nothing except this helmet. And the same thing happened years ago, some years ago, to that case again in the Double Enigma in Camrose, that this man and his wife were watching television, happened to look out, and they thought there was a child on a pony. All they saw was this helmet, and I saw the darn thing there, going that way. What on earth is that? What's the motivation behind me seeing something like that? What is the motivation? No, I think it's.
I sometimes think, you see, I mean, simply because people see these things, it doesn't necessarily mean there has to be a significance behind it. I think, sometimes you'll see things because maybe they are like ghosts. They've been recorded and stored, maybe in the surroundings of a building or something like that. Simply because the thing is there doesn't necessarily mean it has negative.
No, well, that's
negative
quite
purpose
true.
there.
That's quite true. But then, of course, you see, we go back.